Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar about how to let go of the past. My name is Vincent Kelly and I want to say hello to everybody who's out there, wherever you are, on Facebook or on Instagram or on YouTube or on Zoom. I see there's one person that's joined us on Zoom. Hi Fiona. For anybody who's on Zoom, if you want to log on there, you can just send us a message. We'll send you the link and you can send in a message to me directly, and so that I can get your question and answer it. So a little bit of history about myself first, so that you know. I've been helping people on a one-to-one basis for a long time. I came across this subject. This is the subject of the webinar tonight, Dianetics. Dia means true, netics means the mind. And it was written by Hubbard. I came across this in the early 90s in Germany. And I found that it helped me, it helped others, and it works. And I've been promoting it ever since. And that's like, how many years is that? That's like over 30 years promoting the subject, because it helps people. And that's what I want to do tonight. I want that the data that I give you tonight is going to assist you. Now normally on this webinar I'll ask people for examples. If I have many people on Zoom, Fiona, you looks like you're the only one there at the moment. I normally ask people on Zoom, where are you logging in from? So Fiona, unfortunately that's directed to you. So if you can pop that message into the chat, that would be great. For anybody on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram, you can put the comments in and I'll eventually get it around here. And also, if I do throw out an example for you tonight, a question for you, you know, don't feel obliged to answer it. You know, you can if you like. There's no must definitely have to participate in the webinar. You don't. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Stay until the end, because I have a special offer for anybody who stays until the end. So you have to stay until the end. And it'll only be about probably 40 minutes. So let's go straight in. And this particular webinar, hello Fiona, and I'd love to know where you're logging in from, Fiona. That would be great, because you're going to get a lot of personal attention. I don't know if there's anybody on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram, or there could be like 100,000 people watching me on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. I just don't know. Okay, or there could be nobody, but I know you're there. Okay, meetup, that's fantastic. Great, Fiona. And what part of the country are you logging in from? In Dublin, Cork, Galway, Waterford, Belfast, Dublin. Good answer. So we're in Dublin, and I'm in Dublin here myself. I'm in Fairhouse beside Tala, so it's grand. Okay. First of all, when it comes to letting go of the past, there is a piece of information that a lot of people carry around with them, and I want to address this, and that's this. Time is a great healer. Okay, now this is used a lot by people who are giving advice to others. So for example, if you've had a loss or a traumatic relationship, you've lost a friend or a family member, you've lost a job, there's been some trauma, friends will try to help as much as possible. And this is a piece of advice. Look, it'll be all right in time. It'll all work itself out. It'll be all right. Nothing wrong with those words, and they are words of comfort. There's plenty of fish in the sea. All these types of things. It'll, you know, something's going to get better for you in the future. It'll all be fine. Okay, it's nothing wrong with the intention of people who are giving you this advice to say, look, it'll be fine, you know, it'll work itself out. It may help to assure the person that it's going to be okay, and maybe it helps you to forget, but it certainly doesn't heal. Okay? It doesn't really heal, and that's what we're going to tackle tonight. How do you move on from the past so that you are fixed? You know, because if you're only using this, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. There's no guarantee it's going to happen in a year or 10 years or 20 years. So anyway, time is a great healer. It's not what this webinar is about. This webinar is about what are you going to do and how are you going to do it and that it is possible to be done. So, and by the way, if you have any questions as we're going through this webinar, you just let me know. Fiona, that applies to yourself. And Lydia, hi Lydia. You're just joining there now. So for anybody who has any questions, you can pop them in there. And that was for yourself, Fiona, if anything at all. Okay. Letting go of the past. Hi Jay, thank you for joining us. Good to have you. And now, yeah, we'll just make sure all the kind of audio is off, because if when I usually turn off the audio because on everybody, because then people are talking during it, and then it's, you know, I can't be heard and I can't hear them, and other people can't hear others, so that's why we do it. Anyway, it's very good to see you, Jay, on the webinar. So when we say moving on from a loss, it's easier said than done. Easier said than done. They may be words of wisdom saying, move on from your past, but it's easier said than done. For example, I lost my dad in 2011, okay? And honestly, I didn't feel that I was very close to him in the latter years, but when I lost him, I really felt I was close to this guy, because I was shattered. I was just shattered for quite a while. And motivation was down. Just general happiness was down. And it really affected me. I could barely work. I was working after my bereavement leave. I was still working, but I was no good. I was no good for work, because I just couldn't stop thinking about him. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. What should I have said? Should I have done things differently? You know, what did I not say to him that I wanted to say? There's so many things that were there for me personally. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult for me. And on my own family as well. I just couldn't give them the attention that they needed or wanted. So that's basically my story. What I wanted to find out from you before I start giving you some tools, I wanted to ask you, why did you come on this webinar? In other words, what is the loss, or what is the thing that you're having trouble moving on from? I'd really like to know. So for anybody who's on Zoom with us, and hello Elizabeth for joining us. For anybody who's on Zoom or on all the other platforms, obviously you logged on to this webinar about how to move on from the past, okay? What I'd like to know is, what is that past thing? Is it a loss of a family member? Or is it just regrets? Or is it a broke up relationship? A failed relationship? Is there something about your job? If you don't mind popping that into the chat, that gives me a good perspective on kind of examples to give you that might address your situation personally. So if you'd like to, and you don't mind doing it, and you don't mind sharing them in the chat, if you could, that'd be great, and I can see it here directly. So I just wanted to find out, what is it that you're trying to move on from? That's what I'd like to know. And obviously you don't have to give specific names or anything like that, I just want to get a general perspective. But again, it's up to you. I don't want to force it on you. It's just there for you if you want to do that. Okay, so let's get straight into it. And here we go. Okay. We are all trying to survive. We're all trying to do better. We're all trying to help ourselves to get fitter, to become more successful financially, to be healthier, to have a good relationship, to get better in the job, to have more of an influence in the community, to do more for your community. So we're all trying to survive as best we can in different ways. Okay? Now, this world that we live in is not always the easiest, because you do run into barriers and tough situations, and there needs to be all of you there in order to actually get through all this. So I know you've had a tough time, so did I, but what we need to have a look at is what's ahead and what are we going to do in the future. And in order for you to have a successful future and to be able to even think about the future, we need to have all of you here. We need to have all of you in present time. Okay? We need to have all of you in present time and having let go of the past. Because you need all of your vitality, your attention, your persistence in order to get over these obstacles, in order to survive. You definitely need to do that. Okay. Yes, understood. Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. We will address that. Okay. When we talk about the past, we have this thing called a time track. Okay? Like a railway track, but just time. And this time track is a record of all your experiences. Okay, so let's say from the age of 5, here you were 10, here's 15, and now you're 25 years of age. Okay, so as you're going through life, you are going through experiences and you're learning along the way. And here you are in present time. And that's your track in the past. Okay? So you have a record of everything that has happened to you in the past. You have a complete record of things. But what should happen is that you have an experience and you move on. 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 You learn and learn and learn. And eventually you're here. And all of you is still here. And you've got a lot more knowledge because you've had a lot more experience. Now, the more experience you have and the more knowledge you get, the more able you become. Providing all of you is still here in present time. What are we now? 23rd of May, almost 8:15. That's present time. It's just gone now, and here we are again. So we need all of you in present time. So, even if you have a loss, let's say you lose a relationship. Got another example there, a direct message. Yeah, understood. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. I'm very sorry to hear that. I won't share it broadly because it was a direct message, but thank you so much for that. For example, when I lost my dad, okay, my dad was always the kind of guy who wanted us all, there's a number of us, he wanted us all to keep going and, be successful and do well and, just be successful. He was a good guy. He was a good guy. And as I said, he passed in 2011, and I guarantee you, he was the type of guy who did not want me and would not have wanted me to be stuck in the past and to be trapped in that loss. But I was trapped in that loss for quite a long time. Quite a long time. Now, so the ideal situation is that we go through good and bad experiences, and we are all here in present time, ready to face the future and happy. That's the plan. That's the way it should be. So, for example, if you have a loss, you should be able to cry that out for as long as it takes until a person has recovered. Now, it depends. Some people get over a loss or a broken relationship in a short amount of time, and they've cried enough and they finally say, okay, I'm ready. Some people it takes longer. There's no exact time frame. For me, it was quite a while. It was quite a while. On the opposite end of the scale, I remember I lost a girlfriend when I was 17, 18, 19 years of age, and comparatively, it didn't take me as long to get over that. Maybe about a week or two. I was very upset, but I came through it. Okay. Now, so when you have a bad experience, what should happen is that you cry and you grieve and you grieve and you grieve enough so that you've grieved and it's done and that you can move on. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen because what happens is, even though here you are at 25, part of your attention, you know what, I'm going to take a lot more of this part. Part of your attention, I'm going to take a lot more. "75% normally of a person's attention, even though they're functioning in present time, 75% is still in the past. And usually there's about 25% in the present. And they're trying to live life with this 25%. But 75% is trapped back here. Now if we look at that, what that means is that the person is still back here in this incident. In other words, they're not in, what did I say it was, 23rd of May. This is the 23rd of May. Okay, we'd say 8 to 9 p.m. Okay? They're not here. They're back here on the 23rd of May, I don't know, 2010, for example, 13 years ago. They're back here. They're not here. This attention, let me just change the color here. This attention has been trapped in this incident here. Okay, or some of it. And the rest of it is trapped in other incidents and other ones. Why? Why is it that happens? Why is it that a person might have grieved and still can't recover from it? Or a person might have lost a friend or a family member and still is being affected by it, has lost confidence and they haven't got their confidence back. It's still affecting them. So I'm going to explain to you exactly why that happens, but I'm also going to show you how it's handled. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a couple of basics that you probably already know, and you might not think it's relevant here, but it is. So I'm going to touch on a couple of basics, which are very straightforward, and it's just things to prevent you from constantly going into the past. Okay? This is going to sound too stupidly simple, but I'm telling you, I've been a counselor for a long time, and when these points are out, a person thinks about the past much more. Okay? Number one, food. You must eat nutritious food regularly. This doesn't mean you have to go on a special diet, I'm not saying that, but you must eat nutritious food regularly. Okay? Not 2 bananas a day or 14 bars of chocolate per day, obviously, but just nutritious food regularly. And when your body has got sufficient food and sufficient nutrition, proper nutrition, I'm talking about eating your fruit and vegetables, your 5 a day, or whatever it is, these pictures are far less likely to affect you. Number 2 is sleep. Again, these are the 2 things that I check before I take anybody in for a session, which is, have you had enough to eat, and have you slept well? If the person has not slept well, no session. There is going to be no session. Why? because when the body is tired, there's a connection with these pictures in the past. The pictures get pulled in. The negative pictures get pulled in. So you need a minimum of, look, it's different for each person, but roughly between 7 and 8 hours sleep per night. And then number 3 is exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be much. I'm not saying join a gym. I'm not saying do, a lap around a football field every day, but a bit of exercise to get some air into the lungs and get some movement in the body. And again, the less exercise the body is getting, the more the pictures from the past are going to come in. So these are 3 rock bottom basics that have to be kept in. Okay? The other thing I want to keep, just touch on is distractions. Okay? So you could be hanging around with somebody who's constantly reminding you of the past. Okay? So that could be a person. Okay? You could be constantly watching TV. You're watching pictures on TV, and what do you think that does to the pictures in your past? Anybody want to guess? Let's say if you're watching TV obsessively, you're excessively watching television, all these pictures, why do you think these things get triggered? The answer is because they're pictures. These pictures trigger off pictures. They constantly remind you. It's like when you watch a sad movie, it can trigger off losses that you've had. And the artist does that for an emotional reaction, and they do that intentionally. It's art as well. It's to create an effect. Okay? And then obviously the other thing is social media. Look, I like connecting with people. I like staying in touch with people on social media, but it can be very addictive. So you do have to control the amount of time you spend, because the more you're spent looking here, again, it can trigger off these pictures. So it's just a couple of things to keep in mind when you are in a situation where you want to move on from the past. Okay, so let's have a look at why it is that you can't move on from the past. Why is that? And look, we've had traumas, and I'm not going to come across and say, oh, this is simple, magic wand, 5-minute job, that's it. It's not that straightforward, but again, it doesn't have to take a long time. Okay? Here's a person, and here's their past. Okay? And all of your pictures get stored, and all your memories get stored in a part of your mind called the analytical mind. Okay? So everything that you've learned in your past that you are using today is stored in a whole series of pictures on the time track, and this is what we call the analytical mind. It basically means the part of your mind, and by the way, this is the mind. Your mind is not here, this big lump of meat in your skull. That's a brain, but it doesn't represent the mind. There's no way, in my opinion, that all the memories from your past could be stored in a lump of meat. Much to the disagreement of some professions, who will tell you that all you need is a drug, pump it in, take out that side of the brain, it'll be all fine. A philosophy which I thoroughly disagree with. I don't believe that drugs are the answer. And I don't believe they should be recommended, except in extreme situations. If a person is suicidal and the only thing that's going to help them is a sedative, then okay, maybe. But I've seen people going to, for advice on stress and upsets, and they just get recommended pills and drugs and all sorts of things, and it's not really the way to go. Okay. So normally everything stores in your mind. However, when you have a bad experience, if your relationship breaks down, you lose the partner that you've had, or you lose a friend, or you lose a family member through death, a son or a daughter, or in my case, a dad, those bad, painful memories store in a separate compartment called the reactive mind. Why is it called reactive? Because it reacts to external things. It's a trigger part of the mind. Okay? It's a trigger part of the mind. And in this mind, there are two things that are stored. Physical pain. For example, if you've had an accident, or if you've had an operation, or a serious injury, that incident is stored in here. The next one is emotional pain. But it's summarized in this one, loss. If you lose somebody close to you, and you were close to that person, you love that person, that's stored in here. And the reason it gets stored in that part of your mind is because when a huge amount of pain comes in, often the mind is not able to handle the degree of pain. So it shuts down. In other words, you go unconscious or partly unconscious. And during that unconscious period, the information is stored in an unconscious section. And that section is called the reactive mind, and you don't know what's in it. So for example, if you've lost somebody close to you, there are elements of that loss that you do know about, but there are aspects of that loss which are trapped and kept away from you and held in this part of your mind. Okay? So this is what we call the reactive mind. Just like the fuse box in a house. Okay? If you have a house, well, in Ireland anyway, every house has a fuse box. Okay, I'm going to attempt to draw a house here, okay? Okay, fuse box. And the purpose of the fuse box is to protect the house. So if there's too much electricity going through the wires, what's going to happen is that fuse is going to break. It's going to stop the flow of electricity to protect you from getting electrocuted. So it shuts down the electricity. So when there's too much electricity comes in, the fuse box shuts everything down. It's similar with the mind. When too much pain comes in, the mind shuts itself off to protect itself. But while you're fully unconscious or semi-conscious, the information is all getting recorded in this separate compartment here. So for example, if you had an operation where you're getting your arm put back in place, there's a huge amount of pain, but you can't remember it because you were under anesthetic. But that doesn't mean that your ears stopped working, or your sense of smell stopped working, or you couldn't hear what was going on. The information from that incident is stored in the reactive mind. It's a similar situation with losses. If you've lost somebody close to you, it can be a huge, huge impact. And it can really send you into yourself. And that information is stored in here as well. And it's kept. Now, so let me give you an example of this. And this is why it's called reactive. It's a trigger part of the mind. It doesn't think. It just reacts to external things. So, let me take an example here that may be close to the bone here, but I want to mention it anyway because it's a very good way of describing it. If you've lost a child and you see a picture of that child on the wall before you go to work every day, what that does, just seeing that, is enough to trigger this, and this gets replayed all over again. So the reactive mind operates on triggers. So basically, anything that is seen or heard or smelled or tasted or experienced in present time could potentially trigger that incident off again, and it replays. And the person will feel the same emotion, the same regret, and the same upset from that time period. Let's take another example, and I'll give you something I discovered for me. When I lost my dad, okay, this was me. I just had this mass over me. It was constantly there. And I had a friend of mine use some of this subject, which I'm going to go over with you shortly. I have had him to use it, and I realized when I got this, the biggest trigger for me in relation to my dad, which kept reminding me, and for some reason, I just couldn't shake it. I kept thinking about him all the time. I just kept thinking, I'm like, what is it? I couldn't figure it out. Guess what it was? And when I spotted this, things improved dramatically. You're going to think I'm crazy. But it was simply walls. Now, why? Why was it walls? Because my dad was a builder, okay? And he built walls. That's what he did. He built houses and all that kind of thing. So I had walls connected with the loss of my dad because I used to help him as well, building walls. So there was the connection with walls and my dad. So just seeing walls used to trigger this, and I didn't spot it. I didn't see what the trigger was. I didn't know. I thought it was something else. So what you think might be the thing that's triggering you may not be the thing that's triggering you. Another example is when I lost my first girlfriend, okay? And I mentioned it didn't take me a long time to get over it, but while I was in the recovery stage, all it would take is to hear a certain song, okay? One of our love songs that we used to share when we were going out. So I'd hear the song, and it would remind me, and then I'd miss her, so then I'd keep the song playing so that I could completely re-experience the pain. And I felt very sad, and unfortunately it didn't do me much good because it was kind of keeping me in the past. So as I mentioned, people told me, as you've probably heard yourself, time will heal it, it'll all be fine, it'll be grand in a few years, there's more fish in the sea, move on with your life. That's much easier said than done. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, actually. So the main reason why you have difficulty moving on from a loss is because your losses and your pain are stored beneath the analytical section in a reactive mind, which causes the incidents to keep reacting and influencing your thinking, influencing your emotion, and influencing your actions and your mood, So this is the problem. So what's the solution? And people say, oh, Vincent, well, then that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. Then all I have to do is get rid of all the triggers. No. You're not really, yes, it might help not to do the same things every day, okay, but it doesn't really handle the source. Because, and by the way, I want to mention something else, is that I mentioned about your vitality here, okay? Your vitality gets trapped by these losses. So if you were born with 1,000 units of vitality, each loss will trap a portion of your vitality. So if you don't feel as enthusiastic as you used to, this is the number one reason, is because your losses have trapped your vitality. And it doesn't mean that your vitality is gone. It means that it's just trapped, but it can be released. So let's get into exactly what you do with that. But before I do, can I just, I got one example of somebody who gave me in their last personal message to me, an example of something that triggers you when it comes to a loss. So I'd like to ask you, in fact this was one of the exercises I wanted to ask you to do. Thinking about your own loss and your own trauma that you've got difficulty moving on from, can you give me one example of something in life that you're aware of that triggers it off? Can you give me something in life that you see, maybe a place that you go to, a smell, a song? What triggers you off? In other words, you weren't thinking about it, something you see or you hear or you smell or you taste or you feel, and then it gets triggered and you keep thinking about it. Does anybody have an example of that? I did get an example from one person, and thank you so much for that, who was in your last example. Anybody else have an example of that? If you do, please put what the trigger is in the chat. What is it that triggers you? Because as I mentioned, we're not really interested in the trigger aspect of things. Now, in terms of the resolution of this, when a person is in the middle of a loss, happy couples. That's a really, really good one, Fiona. Good example, I mean, I'm sorry about it, but yes, it is a good example. You lose somebody close to your relationship, and then you see people and they're doing so well, and you don't want to feel bad for them. You want them to do well, but it upsets you, and it's a trigger. You don't want to feel bad about it. You don't want to be upset. You don't want to be insecure or worried or stressed out, but you can't control it. And why can't you control it? Because your reactive mind influences your thinking, your body, your emotions without your consent, and often beneath your awareness. And you know, the interesting thing is, it's mainly the triggers that you're not aware of which are affecting you more than the triggers that you are aware of, which is interesting. And you discover that on the next step, which I'm going to go over with you. And thank you very much, folks, for your examples. Much appreciated. Okay, so let's go into the solution now and what we do to handle this. Okay. Now, if I have somebody that comes to our place, yes, that's a good one. A song. Somebody gave me a message there. Yeah, a song can trigger it off. Very good. Okay. Now, when people come in to see me or one of my colleagues here, and they're in the middle of a loss, okay, there is a technique that we use to handle the immediate situation, which is to have them look in their environment to find things that are not reminding them of the person they lost. Find things that are not reminding them. And you do that with the person for however long it takes, 20 minutes or half an hour or more, until the person starts to feel better. And you might need to do that for a few days. So there is a special technique for that, which a person can learn very easily. But what I want to get into more than that is the ultimate resolution. Now, there are many ideas out there about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Some of the ideas that I've heard people suggesting, I'm thinking, okay, fine, you know, if it helps the person, all right, fine. Like meditation, for example. I have nothing against meditation. I think it helps people to relax. Other people do, I don't know, they write down in a book and their thoughts and so forth. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is somebody, so for example, this is what I have a problem with. These solutions I absolutely detest. I think it's horrific. Okay, there's a person who's just been affected by a serious loss, and that might have happened 5 years ago. Okay, that has caused the person now to feel continuously sad. Okay, so they go to a professional or somebody who gives them a label. You've got sad person, I'm making this up, okay, just for dramatic effect. You've got sad person disorder. There's nothing you can do about it. That's your label. There you go. You've got sad person disorder. You've got anxiety disorder. You've got thinking about the past too much disorder. All these silly, silly, silly labels that get put on people, which I really don't agree with. Why? Because it leads to the next thing, which is a drug. Yeah, we've got a drug for that. And yeah, you'll feel right as rain in no time. No problem. All you got to do is take this drug, and what it does is it mixes with the positive chemicals in the brain and the negative chemicals in the brain. Happy days, everything is as fine as a summer day. Okay? No thank you. Even before I got involved in this subject 30 years ago, I already knew there was something wrong with that approach. You know, somebody gets stressed out and a drug is introduced. No thanks. No thanks. I more believe in the natural approach to things, the natural approach. And what I'm about to tell you is based on the most traditional and long-term solution people have had in terms of handling upsets and losses and moving on from the past for thousands of years. This is the most traditional method. Okay. So, as I mentioned, this gentleman here, L. Ron Hubbard, who wrote this book, and I read this book in 1992, and I've been promoting it ever since because it's straightforward, it makes sense, and it works. Yes, of course, there will be some people who say, oh, that's all silly, silly, and you shouldn't do that, and let's do a much quicker approach. Here, take an injection, that's much, much better. And I think, well, thank you very much. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But for me, and the reason I'm here is because this works, I know it helps, and it helped me massively to get over the loss of my dad and other losses that I've had to a point where I regained my vitality and I was able to live again, which is what my dad would have wanted for me. Okay, so in Dianetics, Dianetics means through the mind. We do a procedure called auditing, and it's something that you can learn. Okay, and the word auditing means to listen and guide. And in an auditing session, you need two people. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but it is not possible to clear this stuff up currently on your own. You need help. You need the assistance of another person. It doesn't work to just try and sort it out yourself. It doesn't. I've tried that. I know many, many people who have tried. It doesn't completely handle the issue. So, in an auditing session, you've got an auditor. An auditor is one who listens and who guides. Okay? He is not a life coach. He is not a counselor, because a counselor is somebody who gives advice. The biggest job of the auditor is to listen and to acknowledge what has been said and to guide the person that's being helped through the incident that has occurred. Not to give advice, not to tell the person the reason you're so upset is because you lost your dog. Or the reason that you scratch your nose is because your dad used to scratch his nose. Is not to give him the opinion, because the person who is being helped will be the correct source of the data and will be the one who realizes it for themselves, what's true and what's not true. So, the person who's receiving the auditing is called a pre-clear. Pre means before, and clear is the end result of Dianetics. So Dianetics is not something that you do 10 minutes a day when you wake up in the morning to make yourself feel good for a couple of hours. It is not about that at all. It's about completely and totally dealing with the pain from your past until it's completely handled and you're back living again, creating a future. So it's not a quick fix, it's a complete fix. So the end result is called clear. And once you have achieved this state of clear, all that means is that you've cleared up everything and you're back to yourself again. Once you've achieved that, you're done. You're done with Dianetics. It's done. It's handled. If something is handled, it should not need to be handled again and again and again if it's been properly handled. The trouble with a lot of other theories and approaches is that they try it, it works fine for a couple of days, person feels good, and then they go back into a slump again. In a Dianetics auditing session, which is usually 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, maybe less, the auditor is helping the pre-clear to return while wide awake to past losses and to re-experience them while they're wide awake using this 10-step procedure in the Dianetics book. I don't have time to go over it all right now, and it's explained in seminars, explained in the book, but it's a precise way that you get the person to contact the incident, to go through the incident, and to guide them through the incident until it's done, until it's completely handled. So you might have to go through that incident 5 times, or maybe 10 times, maybe more. And what should be happening is should be tears coming out in that session. For example, when I received Dianetics auditing myself first, my auditor was a trainee auditor. We did a basic seminar together. And during the auditing, I was dealing with a loss of a relative whom I thought I wasn't that close to. But honestly, when I hit the incident using this procedure, I cried continuously for, I don't know how long it was, I lost track of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, buckets and buckets and buckets of tears. I think I've used up a whole Kleenex box of tissues. But when that was addressed, the surge of energy that I regained was massive, and it has never gone away to this day. And that was back in around 1993. So what you're going to do to handle your loss is you're going to use the exact 10-step procedure of Dianetics on that loss until it's completely handled, and you don't leave it until it's handled. And what should happen is you feel relief and you feel like you can now move on. If that does not happen, what it means is that there's an earlier incident connected to it on a chain. There's an earlier loss. So for example, if you lost a friend a year ago and the 10-step procedure hasn't handled it, it means there's an earlier loss connected to it that you might have forgotten about. So the auditor will help you to find what that is and completely address it using the same procedure. If that doesn't get handled, what it means is that there's an earlier one and an earlier one until you get to the basic incident. So when you're in a Dianetics session, normally you're dealing with not just one incident, you're dealing with a chain of incidents. A chain of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe even 10 incidents until you get to the basic. And when you get to this one, which is holding all the others in place, the whole thing just blows. The whole thing clears up. Look, this is not a 5-minute job, and sometimes when people come on my webinars, they expect, oh Vincent, it's an hour webinar, I'm going to walk away here and I'm going to feel amazing. And I wish we could do that on a webinar. Just wave a magic wand, ping, you're grand, ping, you're grand, ping, and it's just not that straightforward. And anybody who tells you it's that simple is not on the same page as I am, basically. This takes a bit of work, but it doesn't take forever. But the faster you get into it, the better it is. The longer you leave it, the more this stuff starts to build. Because every single time you get reminded of that loss, every time you get reminded, a new incident gets added to the reactive mind. And another one, and another one. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it traps more and more and more of your vitality. So it's absolutely vital that if you have had a loss that you have not been able to move on from, something that you haven't recovered from, it's vital to get it cleared up. And once you've cleared up that, you will be more interested in clearing up anything else that has occurred in your life. And with a bit of persistence, then you get to the state of clear. Now, I'm going to just pause here on this point. Does anybody have any... I'm going to do questions and answers, by the way, at the very end. Once I've shown you, I want to show you the book at the end. But does anybody have any questions on this particular point, this procedure? I only kind of briefly touched over it because the procedure's in the book, and I'm going to ask you if you want to get the book. I recommend the book so that you can read it yourself and make up your own mind. But at this point, does anybody have any questions? And if you do, please pop them into the chat. Okay. I don't see any coming in, but if I see a question coming in, I will address it. Okay. So what do you do next? What do you do next? Well, look, you could take Vincent's word for it, come to our centre, get yourself into an auditing session and get going. Okay. Or you could do a seminar and learn how to do this so that you can get twinned up with somebody. We do those courses as well. But honestly, as a technical person, I'm not a salesperson, I'm a technical person. I'm trained in Dianetics for many, many years. It's much better if you find out for yourself the information in this book. It's much better to find out for yourself, to make your own decision in the comfort of your own home. See, does it make sense to you? And if you're reading this book and you go, you know what, Vincent, or whoever you are, I might try this. You can contact us and we can get you in touch with an auditor, or you can do a seminar, whatever you want. So let me just go over this. So I'm going to present now the offer that I have for you for tonight, because this is the first thing I want to show you. Okay, so the Dianetics book, there's 500 pages in this book, and there's a beautiful glossary at the back for any new words that you might come across. There are a few. Dianetics, the power of the mind over the body. So a couple of bullet points we'll put in there. Learn how to permanently resolve the effects of losses and traumas. This handles it so that you can move on. Lack of self-esteem, anxiety and nervousness, negative thoughts and emotions, and regain your full potential. It's been translated into 50 languages. I mean, there's so many languages. I think you can even get this book in Zulu, in an African language. So many languages. Okay, I would recommend this simply because it gives you the opportunity to find out all the information for yourself. There are 3 books in this one book. Book 1 tells you all about what Dianetics is about and the clear. Book 2 is about your mind, the basics of your mind and how it works. And book 3 is the therapy. It shows you the exact step-by-step procedure that you use in order to fully clear up the losses that you've experienced so that you can move on. And by the way, when I say move on, I don't mean forget about the person. Like for me, I still have huge love for my dad. But I know for sure he would not have wanted me to be continuously upset. So this doesn't remove your feelings for the person. It enhances them, but allows you to be able to live. To live. It's not that you're ever going to stop missing them, but you can live again. You can create again. You can create a future again. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, and I think it's interesting. I got a question in there from somebody. I don't want to say who because it's a private message. Does it mean that one has to forget what happened to successfully move on from the past, and how can this be possible? I think I might have addressed that question just there now. The thing is this. The purpose of this subject and Dianetics is to help a person to get rid of the pain that is lodged and stored. It's not to get rid of the memory of the person. It's not to forget about the person. It's not to say, well, let's move on and just we'll pretend like that didn't happen, because it did. Like, I've never forgot about my dad. I've got so many good memories of him in my past. And I don't want to forget, honestly. I don't want to. I want to have those memories. I don't want it not to have happened. But what was vital for me was to get rid of the pain, because I was continuously stuck in it. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I couldn't talk to people. You know, I couldn't get on. I couldn't motivate myself. That's what I needed to handle, and that's what Dianetics handles. It gets rid of the stress and the pain that is stored in that incident. And when that incident is dealt with completely, it moves over from the reactive mind. This is the reactive mind. It moves over from there to a normal memory that you have. Normal. And it doesn't mean that it's got no emotion in it or anything like that. But it just, you're taking away the pain that is holding you in the past. And any other connected earlier similar losses as well. You would be surprised. Like, for me, when I started in Dianetics, I thought, you know, I probably don't have a whole lot of losses. There's only a few I can think of. But the things I could remember after a while blew my mind. Okay, so I hope that helps to answer your question. I think it has. I think it has answered the question. Now, so as I mentioned, I recommend get this for yourself, read it. I have a special offer and a special incentive for you to get this book tonight. And that is, if you get this book tonight, I'm going to be giving you this how to use Dianetics. It's a procedure guide. It's how to use Dianetics. And it shows you literally the step-by-steps that you can literally bring around with you. And if you have a friend or a family member, and you can just show them the steps and get them to apply it. Basic auditing is something that you can do. Right? This book was designed for use. You don't have to do 15 degrees to be able to start using this. Yes, there are different levels of auditor training, but you are much better off starting it and just getting straight into it and using it immediately. So that, how to use Dianetics procedure guide. So if you get that before 10:30 tonight, the book, and there's going to be a link going up in a few minutes. I don't see the link there yet. Where's the link? I don't see the link. Okay, in any event, there will be a link going on to that. There it is. As I said, if you get that before 10:30 tonight, you get this free with the actual, with the book. Okay, so now I want to open the floor for anybody who has any questions on anything I've got over with you tonight. So if you have a question, pop that into the chat and we'll address that before we finish off for the night, and I'll let you go and to enjoy the rest of your evening. So if you have a question or a comment, or even if something I said struck a nerve with you, or it clicked, or it made sense, I'd really like to know. In other words, if what I've said to you made sense to you, I'd love to know. And if it didn't, or you had some confusion or misunderstanding, I'd like to know that as well. So please take this opportunity to pop into the chat any question that you have. Just give that a moment, and if there isn't any questions, I'll just, I've got one or two more things to say, and then we'll wrap up and I'll let you go. And actually, to that person who sent in the direct message to me, could you let me know if I answered your question, if you're happy with that answer, or was it clear? I'd like to know if that answer made sense to you. it wasn't a message that was put on the broad chat for everybody to see. It was a direct message. So I just want to find out if it helped you help answering the question. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in anyway, but if you do, please feel free to pop it in. I'll say one or two final things before we finish off. And when we're done, okay, you're welcome. I'm glad I answered that message. Good. Okay. For me, I was carrying around my upsets for way too long. This handles it. It works. It's very straightforward. It's based on the most traditional method of helping another a person that we've had for thousands of years, which is communication. And it gives stable results. In other words, when you've handled these losses, they're not going to keep afflicting you. And it doesn't mean that you're going to forget about the person or love them less. It doesn't mean that you're going to forget all the sensations and emotions and joy and the pain and whatever. You know, it doesn't mean that you're going to forget that. But it does mean that you're going to be able to move on with your life and be yourself and be happy again. That's what it did for me. That's what it can do for you. And if all it did was just that, I think at that point it would be worth it. Folks, so I don't see any more questions coming in. I'm going to end off in just a moment. And the chat will stay open for a minute or two for anybody who wants to get the book. I would strongly recommend you get it because it gives you the answers that you need. And then if you want to follow it up, you can always contact us. And we can put you in touch with an auditor or get you signed up in a seminar. I want to say thank you to everybody. I'll start off with the other platforms first because I don't know how many people are watching or not. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you so much for your attention tonight. Much appreciated. And I hope to see you soon again. And for everybody on Zoom, I want to say thank you to our wonderful attendees and for your examples, Fiona, Jay, and Elizabeth. Thank you very, very much for giving me your time tonight. I hope what I said has helped you. I hope you continue with Dianetics. The gains are there to be had. Don't leave it off because that's what your reactive mind wants. It wants you to just wait for another 10 years. Get reading now. Learn how to do it now. And contact us if you have any questions. Okay, folks. So good night to you all. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope to see you at some point in the future. As I said, that offer is going to be there until 10:30 tonight. And as I mentioned, if you get it tonight, you get the booklet with it. Okay, folks, have a beautiful rest of your evening. Bye for now.